Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our e-commerce series for which we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution independently. And for today, we have a very interesting solution. It's called PrestaShop. It's very interesting overall, especially in the developer communities. We are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we do that, we are going to start with our intros. If you don't know me, I am Sam Gupta, your host and principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP, commerce, and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Robert for his intro.
Hi, I'm Robert Brown. I'm the principal of Robert Brown eCommerce Consultancy. We help small to medium-sized B2C and D2C businesses move forward.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Robert. And if you're in the guest and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to cover them towards the tail end of the show. If you run out of time, we'll make sure that you are going to receive your answers. On that note, Robert, I am going to start with the quick commentary about this solution, and then we can talk about where they fit in the value chain overall from the technology perspective, the solution offering perspective, as well as from the go-to-market strategy perspective. So PrestaShop, obviously, this is a very open source driven platform. So we have 3 or 4 different open source platform in the market at this point of time. I guess we have already reviewed the bigger one. Magento, Adobe Commerce is always going to be the top open source. Then you have the OroCommerce, and then PrestaShop is the third one. I don't know if we have any other open source platforms in the market. The other interesting thing about open source solution is that they all are PHP based. And when I am talking about PHP, how can I miss the biggest open source platform, which is going to be probably WordPress and WooCommerce, right?
Yep.
Robert. Okay, so these 4, and all of them are, PHP centric, PHP driven. That's the common theme and the thread that we typically see, at least in the e-commerce community. Now, PrestaShop is a very SMB centric solution. It is not supposed to be the enterprise solution based on the kind of features they have. Interestingly enough, they started in France, and majorly their features and the way the platform is positioned, it's a very French solution. It does really well in some of the neighboring countries. North America, sure, if the initiative is going to be very developer driven, then they might argue for PrestaShop, but for the most part, I don't know how much penetration they really have in the North American market. But again, if the initiative is going to be driven by developers, they typically have the bias towards the open source platforms. There are always going to be pros and cons of open source versus commercial solution. There's nothing free in this world, and this platform is not supposed to be free. In fact, they charge a lot. Okay, if you look at their investors pitch, the way this works, and Robert, I know you are shocked with that comment. And the way open source business model works is, obviously, I am going to give you something for free. But, when you, let's take an example of a coffee. Okay, so I am going to open a business for coffee. I am going to throw away my coffee for free. But as soon as you are going to ask for sugar or milk, I am going to charge you 5 times. So coffee is free, but milk or sugar is going to be 5 times.
That analogy is evil because, the world runs on coffee. But
but that's how open source business model works. That's how it is supposed to be.
It is.
That's the reality. People don't get it.
And my analogy for it would be, it's relative how much they charge. It's really, kind of like mosquito bites. They get you for every single little thing. And, so if you ask for too much, then it is death by mosquito bites. But, if you only want a couple of things, then, it may not be that much. But in terms of, there are so many open source solutions out there. So, we've got WooCommerce and we've got Drupal and Joomla and, PrestaShop fits right in there with them, OpenCart. And so it kind of speaks to the level of customer that's at these shops, right? So these are going to be very solidly in the small to mid-size range. They are definitely not going to be in the enterprise range.
Exactly. And you are so right with that commentary. They are definitely in the SMB market. That's what they are targeting. So let's talk about their journey overall in terms of headless. So obviously they don't have a lot of presence there right now. They are investor funded, surprisingly enough. So even the open source platforms require a ton of money to be able to develop, I guess. And they are decently funded. They are not going to be as funded as some of the headless peers, but they have decent funding there to be able to survive, I guess. And by the way, see their number of installations are fairly higher, compared to some of the other solutions in the market. And the only reason why they are going to be higher, number one, they are free. So obviously that's a huge plus for a lot of businesses that cannot afford to pay for licensing, and they are okay, let's say, in hosting in their own data center. In the way, however they want to manage it. Sometimes the guys who are really using these platforms, they are probably going to have developer background, because a lot of e-commerce businesses are actually started by developers. So obviously their preference is going to be just because, it's your skill set. So obviously you are not paying for that, which is okay, because you have the web development infrastructure skill set. So it's not too bad in my mind if you have those skill sets. But if you have to pay for it, obviously, then it's a different story. Any other comments, Robert, before we start on these slides?
No. So if we look at how much revenue they're generating, it's been estimated that it costs between $4 and $14 per month for each installation. If you have 300,000 installations, that's not bad per month.
I'm not too sure if those 300,000 is what you said, right? If they are paying anything, the majority of them will not be paying anything, because obviously it's open source.
Well, so it depends on, where there's a lot of factors in there, but you're right. Some of them may be paying nothing, but then they're also going to be paying for module add-ons. They may be paying for support. They may be paying for developer time, depending on what developer they get for it. So, that's one of the things that open source teams do, is they try to be the source of contact for their chosen area. There's some work that they choose not to do, and they, give it to partners, and some that they really want to do.
Yeah, and exactly. And if you look at, some of the reviews and the commentary, and the reason why I really sort of, believe in my coffee analogy, because, if you compare this with your e-commerce experience, these guys are actually charging for themes, and you don't have a lot of free themes available. So, you are going to pay. How are you going to run without a theme? So, so that's why, unless you are really in the case of coffee, at least, you can probably afford to have black coffee. But in the case of e-commerce, I don't think you can run e-commerce business without a theme. So, open source business is very tricky in my mind, always.
Yep.
Okay, so if you don't have any other commentary, let's review some comments here. So here they are saying PrestaShop is a freemium open source e-commerce platform. The software is published under, obviously the licenses there, OSL, which is great. PrestaShop is currently used by 300,000 shops. Worldwide is available in 60 different languages. What other comments do we have here? So between May 2010 and 2012, PrestaShop grew from 17 employees to more than 100. So that was a massive spike. But after that, they remained roughly about the same. So I don't know what's going on there, to be honest. Okay, so between in those 2 years, they were almost at 100 employees, but from there on, they are at roughly 120 employees in offices in 6 countries. But right now, if you look at the count, I don't think it's it's similar. So I don't know what's going on there. I really don't know. Maybe they were trying to get funding or whatever. Yeah, I just
yeah, for them to go from 17 to 100 in that one span, there must have been some funding, probably some angel funding at that point to help fund that growth, and then consolidating.
Exactly. So some more comments here. So in 2014, and by the way, if you correlate with this data point with some more commentary here, Robert, then 2014 they acquired 9.3 million funding. So that the hiring was right before the funding. So typically that's going to be after funding, but for some reason the order is reversed. So I don't know if they were trying to show the strength to get the funding. I don't know. But this seems to be reversed. So in 2015, the company launched PrestaShop Cloud, but at least since 2017 is no longer available. So I don't know what they were trying to do there. I just don't know. Maybe they killed the hosting, I believe. So I don't know if PrestaShop hosts right now. The only thing you are going to get as part of your free license is really going to be your code base. It's not the hosting that is going to be free. You still need to pay for hosting when you are going to go for something like Shopify, BigCommerce. You are going to get support as well as hosting. So you get far more when you pay for it. Here, the only thing you are getting is really the code base that is very poorly documented, I guess.
It is no small endeavor for a company to set up a cloud instance for their service. If they were self-hosting it, if you outsource it to like Google or Amazon, that's a different story. But if you're trying to build it on your own, and we don't have the details on that, it probably became burdensome to find the resources, and they were afraid of liability, because if they got hacked, then they were on the hook for it, and that liability is really expensive.
I completely agree. And by the way, even if you're hosting on Amazon or Google, it's not that you are completely off the hook. You still need to figure out the architecture.
Right. Yeah, you do. But at least those are readily available.
Yeah. At least you have some protection, but the architecture still matters. You still need to hire the expertise to be able to build for that. So here's some more comments here. PrestaShop has been built as a monolith is the term that they are using, following traditional object-oriented PHP practices. Based on a custom framework, it is progressively being migrated to Symfony. The majority of the platforms that we have seen so far, they were based on Symfony. This is not even based on Symfony. So that's probably a little red flag there, because obviously Symfony is going to have far more development-based resources. So that could be a factor. Now, here they are saying PrestaShop add-ons, a marketplace through which merchants purchase custom add-ons and themes for their stores. And I think that is paid. So here, this is the business model. This is where they have clarified the business model. As an open source organization, PrestaShop is faced with the challenge of generating revenues. Anybody is. You have to feed your families, okay? By leveraging the size and international scope of its open source community. Obviously, the community is contributing the code. That's why you are able to deliver. So, you have some advantages there of open source, but you still have to make money to be able to feed your families if you're going to be full-time with this company. The company established two main sources of revenue. So they are saying PrestaShop add-ons, a marketplace through which merchants purchase custom add-ons and themes for their stores, and strategic partnerships with e-commerce industry leaders such as PayPal or Google. So this is one platform that try to promote the PayPal as their primary payment provider, and PayPal is very expensive in general. In my experience, when I look at the commission that typically PayPal charges, that's probably going to be higher than any other payment providers. And with this, you are not going to find a lot of payment providers. So now you need to integrate it yourself. So again, there are pros and cons. They are going to give you PayPal because that's where they are making money, even though the platform is open source. So there are always pros and cons of everything. Here they are saying in terms of features, managing product listing, payments, shipping, manufacturers and suppliers. I don't see anything relevant there. That allows users to customize, add new features through add-ons, modules. The PrestaShop add-ons marketplace provides a platform for third-party developers to sell themes and modules to merchants. So it's not just the PrestaShop that is selling. Third-party developers can sell as well. So that's similar to WordPress. The one thing that I really liked about this one, and I don't know if the other PHP communities are going to do the same thing. These guys are integrated with Elementor, which is a big deal. It's much easier to find the Elementor developers these days, and then you don't have to worry about changing themes, because most of the developers that are publishing their themes, they are going to be very poorly funded overall. They are not backed by large companies in general. It's probably going to be one developer who's going to be supporting from somewhere, and you don't know where they are living. And when you are going to get issues, then you can't get hold of them. And then who's going to support it? Nobody knows, because the developers has written the code and they are not going to open it for you, even though PrestaShop is going to be open for you. So this is where I like that they have integrated with Elementor, which is a big deal in general. But just because you have Elementor, that's not the complete story, because you are still going to need a lot of add-ons. You're still going to need themes. So again, you need to rely on the community as well as the developers. So make sure you are paying attention to where you are getting your components. Go ahead, Robert.
So the thing to be aware of, and we've talked about this a few times, when you start having lots of add-ons, you get this giant matrix, and these guys can't cross-test with everything. And so just like you have with our other favorite open source tool, WordPress, when you get plugins that conflict, the site shuts down.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It really is.
And their response is, oh, well, it must be one of your plugins. So deactivate all of them and then turn it back on individually to figure out which one's causing the problem. And so if you have a really slim team, you're either going to spend a lot of time debugging, or you're going to pay somebody to support that for you.
And even if you find somebody to support it for you, it's very hard even for them, because again, they don't have access to the code for those plugins. Okay, nobody has the complete picture. Even if you had, it's going to be very hard to debug because you don't have documentation. So even if you have the core platform, okay, that is open source, so what?
And so what ends up happening? Oh, well, you have to open a ticket, or you have to send an email, and you have to wait for the developer to get back to you. And so your store could be sitting on the parking deck for a weekend and losing sales before you get, your issue resolved.
Exactly. And by the way, anybody can forgive you, but Google is not going to forgive you. I guarantee this. Okay. So if your site is going to be down, or, some of the pages are going to be broken, good luck with that.
Oh, yeah, especially if you have a really complex advertising program. So let's say that you've got like 8 channels running and with, multiple campaigns, and suddenly your site goes down. You're going to be worrying about your site, and you're going to forget about your campaigns. Your campaigns are, basically driving all this traffic to a site, and they're falling off like a waterfall. So you're just burning money in advertising that's not going to generate any revenue until you fix that. So process is important.
Yeah, and Robert, with advertising, you have a little control there, to be honest. Okay, so you can probably pause them. Obviously, Google takes a little bit of time, to trust you again, even when you are paying. But with SEO, you are definitely going to lose it.
No, and you're absolutely right. No, my point being here is if you get into the mindset of a small team, right? So the mindset of a small team, we're not talking about a large team where you have individual roles. A smaller team, the site goes down. Everybody's going to be focused on the site, solving the site issue. So for them to, we need to get the site back up because we're not making sales, we're not making money. Okay, well, somebody has to have the wherewithal to like, oh, darn, we have ads running, we need to go turn them off. Is it difficult? No. You can go pause them all. You can go pause the entire campaign. You can go pause all the campaigns, but it's logging into each one of the platforms that you're using and making sure that is built into your process for your continuity.
Yeah, could not agree more. Great point. So some very interesting things about the platform, and I like the way they have laid out the shipping rates. This is a very, very, very good depiction of how shipping should be done in my mind. I don't think I've seen similar structure with any other platform, and that's why I found it really interesting. Here you are going to have all of the countries, and then you have the rules that are very clear in terms of how you are specifying. There's a clear hierarchy at the product level that you can specify, and then these rules are going to kick in whether you are offering the free shipping for a specific combination or simply specifying your shipping tiers. This is done wonderfully well in my mind. It's really, really good. I don't know if this is going to be a differentiator for this platform because I have not seen it done it this well with the other platforms. They might have their own ways of doing things that might be slightly more complicated, but I do like this one a lot.
This one certainly makes it very easy for a single product line with a few variations. But if you are a third-party seller with lots of different SKUs, you're going to have to upgrade for really your shipping.
So do you want to provide some more colors there in terms of commentary? So why is it going to be difficult? Let's say if I have millions of SKUs.
So if you have lots of SKUs, right? So you have, that's a level of sophistication, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a level of sophistication of your logistics, of understanding, where your SKUs are, what you're selling, how big they are, and what the cost is to move each one of them. Let's say here in the US alone, right? So what shipper are you going to use? Are you going to use UPS Ground, which is 3 days around New York City, which, where I'm based? Or are you going to go to the Midwest? Or, are you going to go to California? Which zone is it going to be? And then what surcharges are going to go along with that? And so for very simplistic pricing, this is great. But if you're going to have a lot of SKUs, you need to know which of your shipping contracts is going to supply the best rate for that particular SKU, so you don't sell it underwater.
I see where you are going with that. So basically the mapping of your plans with your SKUs. So here the only thing you are mapping is just the rate. That correlation does not exist with your plan. Yeah, I see where you are going.
So this is very simplistic, and this works really, really well for like the smaller, less complicated shippers. But for larger, more complicated, then you need to get to a different level.
I completely agree, and I think we saw even in Shopify. I think they have this when you are going to have the right. Okay.
Yeah, because then you have to actually start thinking about dim shipping rates.
I completely agree. Yeah. So here some more very interesting things, and I don't know, Robert, if you are going to like it, but I personally liked it. And again, I don't think I have seen this being it as this clear. My understanding is that BigCommerce supports this. Magento, you are going to get this. I don't know if other platforms are going to have this sophistication, especially with the variant functionality. So here, Robert, what you are doing is once you specify all of your variations, for example, your size, color, and then you have the texture. Once you specify all of that, it's actually going to generate all of the SKUs as soon as you press the generate button. So you have reduced maintenance time. Otherwise, with other platforms, they might have features such as, you can duplicate the SKU. So you are going to duplicate the SKU, and then you still have to sort of accommodate the variations in this. The whole process is sort of, magical the way, it's going to work. So I kind of like it.
No, I like this. I've seen some people trying to do it automated in spreadsheets and then upload the spreadsheet. But this is very nice because then you just go into the attributes and you create all the attributes. And the only thing you have to remember is if one of the attributes is no longer available, then you just have to go delete it once you're out of stock.
So let's do a little walkthrough of the last scenario that you mentioned. So let's say if the attribute is not going to be available, so what's going to happen again?
All right, so let's say that you have right in front of us, you got the size small and black.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got that in stock, but you no longer can get it, right? So you've got 5 in stock. So you need to sell out those 5 and then remove the attribute of black.
Interesting. So one thing, let's get one thing out of our way is going to be, okay, when you are creating something, that's always going to be far harder than deleting. Okay, deleting is always easier. Okay, that's why you don't have as much maintenance when it comes to deleting. So let's say if I want to delete, I want to sort all of the black ones that I have at the SKU level, I simply select, boom, and then hit delete, and then I am gonna go and delete my attribute. Do you still see that there is going to be a little bit of effort there, or
No, I don't. It's not much of an effort at all. All I'm saying is what I've noticed consistently across organizations is a challenge with process.
Right.
And so there's oftentimes one-offs that create confusion when you have to go back and do it again. And so they need to get into a habit of doing documentation and creating those processes so you can have a consistent result.
Yeah, could not agree more. I mean, you have to have the processes irrespective of how your system is being managed. I mean, the processes are not supposed to be optional. So great point. Thank you so much. Okay, so some more very interesting features that I don't think I have seen it anywhere else so far. So the way they have done the brands and suppliers, and I don't know what is the intent. So the brands and supplier, I don't know if they are trying to drop ship. A lot of e-commerce platforms, they are going to have their PO functionality as part of your e-commerce platforms because they might not have an ERP. So everything is sort of managed inside your e-commerce platform. So here they have the brands. By the way, brands is a big deal for an SMB platforms. And now I don't know if the brand, the way they are referring, if these are going to be the website brands, because in the e-commerce world, the way the brands are going to be perceived when you are going to go across the platforms, they are going to have one website for each of the brands. But here, Robert, how would you take this? Is it going to be more of the brands that you are carrying from the suppliers? Is that the intent?
That is what I am taking this to mean. So if I am a 3P seller of sneakers and I manage and I specialize in, say, Adidas and Nike.
Yeah.
So I'm going to want to have the Adidas and Nike logos on there and associate them with the appropriate SKUs. So I'm getting the right presentation on the product detail page. But you also may have multiple suppliers for that. And so you're associating which suppliers are supplying which products to you. I think that's what I see here.
Right. So my take on this is going to be, why did we not see this with the other platforms that we have reviewed so far? And the other take that I am going to have is, okay, is this platform going to be more of B2C or is it going to be B2B or somewhere in between?
I think this is more B2C. So I have seen this functionality in BigCommerce. So you can actually add the brand logos in a separate screen, and then you associate your SKU with that brand. So the logo is replicated across the site, wherever that brand may be.
Okay, very interesting. Any other commentary here on this one? No?
Nope.
Okay, good. Okay, so some more interesting layers overall. They have the customer service module. We have seen in the case of Oro, they had their CRM offering bundled as part of e-commerce. These guys are trying to bundle customer service. So obviously that's slightly more extending the boundaries of e-commerce. But when I think of customer service, Robert, customer service, especially if you're using e-commerce platform, especially in B2B, okay? You are going to have your sales reps, you are going to have your customer service. They are probably going to be on your e-commerce platform. They are probably not going to like ERP, depending upon, how much B2B processes you have versus, if everything is served through your e-commerce platform. And that's where the design is probably going to be handy and the kind of issues you are going to get, because you are always going to have sort of pros and cons. But based on what I have seen in the market, the majority of the businesses, they like to have their sales and customer service operating on e-commerce and ERP sitting somewhere in the back end, just doing the accounting. Yeah.
So this is a very common piece of functionality for B2C and smaller organizations, because you don't have the separate systems, you don't have the manpower for it. So it's just going to be, you're going to be multitasking and having it in one place. So the customer opens up a ticket and you can see whether it's it's being returned, have the tracking labels, the communications to the customer all in one place for the folks that are going to be within the organization multitasking.
Exactly. Great points. If you don't have anything else on that, let's move to the next one.
I like this.
This one is great. I absolutely love it. And I don't know why we did not see this in any other platform. And this is not meant to be a workflow. So when we saw Oro, they had sort of the approval workflow,
Right.
if you remember correctly, and it was way too complicated for anybody to be able to understand. Okay, but here, this is the timeline of the transaction. So in my mind, this is going to provide the traceability for your customer service reps, as well as your sales reps, if they are using your e-commerce platform to debug. So this is definitely going to add to your customer experience.
Yeah, this is a very simplistic view for very simple orders, and if it becomes very complicated, then this would become unwieldy. I've seen a number of order history screens that are basically spreadsheets. So you just get a bunch of lines and date order, and you can export that to slice and dice it however you want. So when you're dealing with large volumes, that makes it easier. But this makes it very easy to deal with that individual order to see exactly what's going on.
So you are actually hitting on a very interesting point, and the reason why other platforms would not be able to do something like this is because they are trying to pull off much larger volume. Their order is going to be very complex. So I don't know if this is going to make sense in their case as well. My understanding of this platform is going to be, this is really designed for very simplistic e-commerce operations. It's not really designed for very complex e-commerce operations, and that's why it is probably good to give them, because they might not have as much background with technology, so they need to have a little visual clues there.
And you raised a really, really great point right there, and I have run into this, and I'm sure that you have as well. When you have an organization that has a tool that they're used to and they're comfortable with it, and they continue to duct tape it, and it's long past due being replaced, and they're like, no, we can make do. Come on, we just need this little adjustment right here. Exactly. And trying to get them to understand you've outgrown this. It's time to move up to the next league. It's that balance of when is that move time, and getting the executives to buy into that.
And speaking of duct tapes, I think you are going to see a lot when you are using an open source platform. You give it to developers, let them do whatever they want to do, and good luck with that. Everywhere, the only thing you are going to see is duct tapes.
Well, you would be very lucky if they at least go to Home Depot and get one piece of tape of every color, so you can at least keep track.
Exactly. Great point. Could not agree more. Okay, so here we have the payment, and it's very lean overall, and this is always my concern. So for me, Robert, when I look at the e-commerce, my priority always is going to be payment and shipping. Those two. That's my bread and butter. Yeah. Okay. If you are not going to give me the right rate, as the CFO, I am probably not going to feel comfortable, irrespective of how sexy the platform is going to be. Okay, so I don't care for the technology as the CFO, because for me, rate is my bread and butter. And if I am paying PayPal, and I don't know what is the recent rate. I think they used to be like, what, 7%? And that's probably 2-3 times of what, Shopify or any other platforms in the market are probably going to charge. That's a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, that is one thing that far too many people overlook is the spread. Yeah. Right? What the VIG is going to be for you to use their service. Initially they're thinking, you know what, I just need to get something in place. And it's only after the shop is running for a little while that they realize that, maybe their CPA says, you know what, you're paying a little higher rates here. And, we usually end up seeing that in very small brick and mortars that don't have good credit rating, and they have to take the third tier merchant services companies that typically have higher merchant services rates. When you get to a higher credit rating and a little bit better well-known, then you can actually move on to the Elevon, where you're paying like the 1.38 and 30% or less. It's frustrating, but looking through their payment modules, they've got a lot, and there are a lot of downloads of these.
Exactly. And the other points I am going to make here, Robert, and I don't know if you're going to agree with this comment or not, I'm probably going to call out some of the agencies in the market. Okay. And the reason why I am calling them out is because, they do prefer, open source a lot, just because it's going to be development dollars for them. Okay. So obviously everybody's sort of incentivized to make the highest amount of dollars for them. So, if agency is coming in, they are going to think, okay, why am I paying to Shopify and BigCommerce? Okay, you can probably get far better value, let's say, if you got for the open source. From your perspective, let's say if you are a brand or the manufacturer or the retailer, you are probably going to end up paying same. The beneficiary in this equation is probably going to be the agency, which is development heavy, because they are making a lot more dollars, based on development. So from your perspective, you are bearing a far more risk, but then you are paying roughly the same. If you have internal development capabilities, then it's a different story, because you are not paying as much. So I don't know how you would take this, Robert.
That is a mixed bag. It really is, because you've got onshore developers that are very expensive.
Yeah.
So typically the smaller shops are going to say, I can't afford that. And so they're going to go look for the offshore teams, or those that are offering lower rates that are using offshore teams. There are some offshore teams that present themselves as US shops, and they're outsourced to the Ukraine. And so they're charging, they pay their developers $15-20 an hour. They're charging you $40. They're making the spread plus the actual time to pay their developers. If you have your own developer on staff, are you going to have an offshore developer fully attached to you and, deal with that time zone difference, but maybe a language difference, or are you going to pay US rates? And, then you also have to have a development manager to oversee what the developer's doing to make sure that they're not taking shortcuts and they're not going to expose you.
So here's my take on that experience, Robert. And again, if you're talking about a team where you have 50 developers, where 40 could be offshore, 10 could be onshore, then it's a different case. But typically when you are looking at the SMB market, you are probably going to have one developer. And my understanding and my experience working with offshore, they are going to be great at technology. But just being great at technology is not enough when you are developing a business solution, irrespective of whether you are doing e-commerce or ERP. Okay, there are a million ways of doing the same thing, and you need to understand the number one, business rationale. Number two, how it is going to impact your SEO. Sure, they might know technically, but they are not going to be expert at business. So where are you going to find that expertise? And typically when you're going to have onshore developers, they are going to have far more perspective. So in my mind, it always evens out.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's a lot to consider. What I have typically found is many of the offshore firms that I have dealt with, the very big brand name ones, you usually end up getting a junior developer who's reading a lot of code, and every once in a while there's a code review, so your code is not as efficient as it could be.
Exactly.
And then you go through twice as much Q&A to fix what an onshore developer wouldn't have done in the first place. So you sometimes have language communication problems.
Exactly.
Not that they don't speak English, but it's the finesse of fluency and accent. I've worked with some Irish developers that their Irish accent is so heavy, I have to ask them 3 times, what? And so you have to tread that path lightly.
Yeah. So even if you can figure out, let's not worry about the linguistic barriers that we have, but even if you are simply focusing on the technology solution, technology is supposed to be an art. Okay, the way they are supposed to be designed, it's not science. It was never science. Software was never science. Okay, whenever you are going to be accomplishing something, there are going to be probably a million ways of accomplishing the same thing. A junior developer is going to know just one way, okay, or 2 ways or 3 ways, not 5. Thousands of ways. And when you are going to be hiring senior people that are going to be at least doing the code reviews, as you correctly pointed out, then they are going to be guiding them in the right direction. So again, if you have 40-50 developers that you can afford, then that structure might make sense. But for an average SMB where you are going to get just one junior developer, my goodness, good luck with that. You are not going to get performance. You are going to have a lot of issues.
Do you know how often I have seen developers in like Reddit asking for ways to do stuff? It's that you get, and they work for rather large companies that have 12 European websites, and they don't know how to do multilingual, and they're trying to figure out how to make that plugin work, and can somebody give them a code snippet? It's so it's just there's no one size fits all.
Yeah,
it's just you have to take a look at what the company is trying to achieve and the dollars that they have to do it, and try to help them find the best path forward with those variables.
Exactly. Great points. Any other points, Robert, on this slide for payment? Okay, perfect. So some more very interesting things here. The number of order statuses that they have. Okay, I have not seen it anywhere else. Now I am happy as well as sad. Happy because obviously sometimes you do need a lot of different order statuses. But when you are going to be looking at any developer-centric platform that is very developer-driven, typically that is going to be over-engineered in general. Okay, just because the way they think, the way they work, everything is going to have millions of possibilities. From the business perspective, I don't know if you need all of that. Okay, business likes to simplify things. So I feel this is slightly cluttered in my opinion. And I don't know if they have really considered the target persona who's going to be using. So I don't know if I really like it. But the positive is going to be that you are probably going to have the traceability based on different order statuses, and you can take different actions based on these order statuses. But for me, it's kind of busy.
It is very busy. I can see a use case where it would be valuable to have those different ones, but I wonder if this is just in a config file and you can adjust it for your own needs.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. And, some of these statuses seems to be slightly more overlapping here. Yeah, so I completely agree with your point. And typically with e-commerce, ERP kind of solutions, even if you are able to change this in a config file, that typically impacts your workflow. So even if you are able to change it technically, make sure you analyze it thoroughly, because you are going to have dependencies on your workflow. So I don't know how you are going to manage. So again, this is not your technology platform. There's a very different business solution that is going to have some sort of implication on the downstream processes. So I don't know.
Well, what you sometimes see is you get a newbie who's just, been introduced to the platform, and they say, what, I don't need this, and I don't need this, and I don't need this. And then 6 months to a year down the road, they're looking for a particular report that's not generating, and they realize it's because you remove statuses that those reports are no longer working.
Yeah, exactly. Great point, Robert. Do you have anything else on this one? No? Okay. So this is what I personally like. Okay, as a developer, I want to see this. You have everything right in front of you. SQL Manager, A lot of ERP platforms are going to have this. I don't know if the e-commerce platforms provide, and again, this is a very developer perspective. That's why they have done it this way. So you are probably going to get far more control. And if you watch the demo video, the way they have shown this, Robert, you can probably download this SQL query. You can integrate with one of the REM platform to be able to do your analysis. So it's really slick and neat the way they have done it. And just in general, when you have access to your database on your UI, at least you don't have to mess with installing the SQL Studio or whatever and then playing with that. Sometimes business people, they are not going to be as comfortable. But here you have everything as part of the UI. And typically, in my experience, business people are okay in figuring out SQL at least. So this is a great, great, great addition.
Yeah, it's you just need to really understand where the data is lying to get the reports that you want. But I do love getting direct access to the data.
Exactly. Could not agree more. Okay. So here are their integrations, and in my opinion, they are really lean. Sure, you have Stripe here, you have Klarna here. So maybe you will be able to manage because as long as you are doing Stripe, they might be able to cover most of the credit cards that you are probably going to need. Klarna may be able to cover all the international payment workflows for you, and some of the advanced scenarios such as what is that? Buy now, pay later.
Yeah,
Buy now, pay later, right? I mean, I think they are doing that.
for pay.
Yeah.
They have many. So they've got Apple Pay, they've got of course Amazon Pay, they've got, you can pay with Bitcoin. It's just a matter of which payment tools you want to pay for to have integrated.
Exactly. Could not agree.
They have more than 6 pages of them.
Yeah, very interesting. So the other comment I would have here, Robert, and I don't know if you are going to agree with me, the shipping overall, is very lean in general. So they have DHL here, and some of the ones that I have never seen them before. So obviously they are going to be very, France or European centric, and that's probably the reason why we are not able to connect with them or relate with them. So obviously this is a very European centric platform,
Yep.
but a lot of North American businesses are using it as well. So make sure you are sort of doing your due diligence that you are probably going to be needing these platforms. The other comment I'm going to have here is going to be the hosting. Looks really lean. If you are going to be doing only one and one, and I don't know which one is this. Is it Ionos, or how do you read that or pronounce that? Is it Ionos? Ionos? Okay, Ionos. So Ionos, but you don't have anything else.
Well, One and One is a German company, and I remember when they first came here, a friend of mine actually helped them. The lawyer helped them, do all their documentation to get installed here in the U.S. And they're big, and they were offering lots of great services. Do I think they're the best hosts out there? No, they're just European based. I think we have some better ones here in the U.S. So for that to be the only one, that's interesting.
Yeah, honestly speaking, I mean, it's not really US versus Europe, right? I mean, whichever geography you are going to be in, you probably want to explore whatever is going to be available in your geography. But at the same time, let's say if US businesses are, or North American businesses are trying to use this platform, then they need to do a little bit of due diligence in terms of where it is going to be hosted, what kind of payment platforms are going to be supported, and the delivery as well.
Yep.
So now, in terms of the brands, and you are typically far better in doing research for these brands, Robert. And I don't know if you have had a chance to look at any of those. There are some big ones here. I can recognize, but not a lot, to be honest. And I don't know if these are really SMB. Some seem to be slightly bigger, whether it is B2B, B2C. From the industry perspective, they seem to be focused on fashion, food and drinks, and sport. So my understanding is going to be it's still very B2C.
Yep, it these are the brands that I know from B2C as well. So I have not seen a B2B implementation of this in the stuff that I've looked at.
Yeah, and I think I read some of the commentary that they don't have the advanced B2B features. For example, non-e-commerce centric play. If you talk about ticket sales, you talk about subscription, you are probably not going to find in this. So this is probably designed for very product centric organizations. And obviously, e-commerce is not just limited to that, but a lot of people think that e-commerce, product, art product, that's
And
not the
subscriptions is still a very hot topic, and WooCommerce has a pretty good subscription module.
Is that native or is that add-on? Add-on, right? So it's not native.
Yeah, it's an extra $199 a year.
Yeah, I'm not typically worried about $199. It's the maintenance nightmare that you borrow when you are going to be utilizing every single add-on. That's always my risk with any of the add-ons.
Yep, completely agree. And especially when you start getting those custom themes and you start doing those plugins in there, there's conflict is fun.
Yeah, and by the way WordPress is designed, it was never designed to be sort of the database-driven application in my mind. The way user security architecture is done, okay? Typically, when you are dealing with dollars, you better have some sort of, segregation of duties there, even if you're going to have 2 layers or 3 layers or 5 layers, whatever you need for your organization. But in my mind, when I'm dealing with dollars, I need to have some sort of, security restrictions there. WordPress was never designed for that. In fact, the way their plugins are designed, each of them are sort of going to have their own tables. So it's not as some of the other add-ons that you are going to see in the other ecosystem, where maybe the add-on is just in UI and the only thing it is doing is accessing the underlying same tables. In those cases, you are not going to have as much risk. But in this particular case, most of the WordPress add-ons, they are not done well in my mind in general.
Well, yeah, you see a developer does a plugin, he releases it may be popular for a while, and then the competition heats up and he has to devote more time to it and decides not to, and so then it falls by the wayside, it's no longer being updated, and just kind of leaves that customer going, wait a minute, it's not working with my tool anymore, and he's not responding to my queries because he's a sole developer, many of them are.
Exactly.
But then you have to migrate to something else.
Exactly. And that's why I like Elementor a lot, to be honest. It's a very well-funded company, okay, and they are doing really well. So if you can, let's say, even if you can cover your 80% of coverage on Elementor, you are probably going to have a very happy life. If you have to use 10%, 20% of the code coverage in terms of add-on, go ahead and use that. I mean, you need to use a lot of add-ons anyways, but at least try to think more in terms of the code coverage and the percentage, what risk you are bearing in general.
Mm-hmm.
So some more comments here. So here, okay, so PrestaShop checkout, where is it available? And this is coming from their FAQ, and they have mentioned that the only countries that it is going to be available in is going to be in France, Italy, and Spain. So obviously, their target market is probably going to be these countries, even though they are trying to sell everywhere. But for the most part, the majority of the functionality you are probably going to get in these countries. So if you are, let's say, a France-based startup or Italy-based startup, then you are probably going to get far more mileage based on this platform. Not sure about the other countries. If you don't have any other comment here.
Nope.
So here, I actually like this functionality a lot. And again, this particular functionality is going to be available in B2B scenarios where you can disable the pricing. So they are allowing that. I don't know how many platforms out there can do that. Robert, do you know if Shopify is going to allow that? I would think that they are probably not going to have that because they were always targeted for B2C.
Yeah, I have not seen an implementation of Shopify without prices.
Yeah, and BigCommerce, most likely they are probably going to allow because they are obviously targeted for B2B. But this is a very interesting piece of functionality required for B2B. You are probably going to need this because sometimes you will not be able to show price, if they are going to be either guest users or visitors or whatever, maybe
right.
The use case or scenario. Quickly on some reviews, and then we can probably open up the commentary. So here, the comment is coming from a very small shop, 11 to 50 employees, and they are in Singapore. They are complaining about reports. Then it does not have enough reports, which is okay. I don't know what to expect when you are going to be using open source platform. Some more commentary here. Businesses dealing from one product to 100,000 products, it is probably going to be okay. But when you are going to have millions of SKUs, it's probably not going to be okay. I don't know why you would use this platform when you are going to have a million SKUs. I don't see a reason. But if you have made that decision, good luck to you. Here, the user is also complaining about events, registrations, subscription, and the tickets and bookings. You are not going to get this. So non-traditional e-commerce workflows are probably not going to be supported here. Some more commentary here. Great e-commerce open source software. This is also a very small business. So you can see a trend that it is primarily used by startups, 1 to 10 employees. And here they are saying not a lot of free templates. And that was my problem as well. You are not going to get a lot of themes and the templates that you can get it for free. And then you have to pay a lot to either PrestaShop or third-party developers. So here they are saying images can sometimes be too compressed and lose their full quality. They are doing a lot of work in the case of images. So there is something going on here. I don't know, but images probably going to be critical for you if you are an e-commerce business. So make sure you do a little POC there and verifying their capabilities. Product selling platforms rather than surveys. There is a little jab here on their business model, I guess. That's pretty much it, Robert. So I'm actually going to open up for the commentary as well as comments from audience.
Honestly, this is basically just WordPress, WooCommerce, the French edition.
That's how I would define it. To be honest, it's probably going to have slightly superior e-commerce functionality in my mind. I don't know if WooCommerce is going to be as rich in features as this is going to be. So it's definitely going to be slightly richer, but obviously your WordPress is going to be slightly richer from the content perspective. So you have pros and cons there.
Yeah. It's I can't, put a dollar number on the size that you should consider start moving out of this. I think it really comes down to the level of complexity, the number of orders that you have on a regular basis, how large your team actually becomes when you start feeling the pain in certain areas. You know that when you have teams wearing multiple hats and they start spending an awful lot of time in one area, like customer service, you have to start taking a look at why are they spending all that time on customer service? Is it technology that's causing it, or is it volume that's causing it?
Exactly. Could not agree more. And in my mind, Robert, and you can disagree if you like. My take on this is going to be, let's say if you are under $1 million, and again, if you are under $1 million, why would you pay to expensive developers? That would not make a ton of sense. But let's say if you are the developer yourself and you started e-commerce business, then you are not paying for developers. Then it would probably make sense to use this platform until you reach $1 million too. But after that, you can probably afford the other platforms. You're going to get far better security. You are going to get far better support with Shopify BigCommerce. So that's how I would like to define it.
Yeah, I know a $20 million retailer, and they were on BigCommerce, and they had a very lean staff, did not have a developer on staff. It was every once in a while they would do some custom development. And, I would not have recommended them be on this just because of the complexity of maintenance.
Yeah, could not agree more. Great point. So let's go over some of the comments. We can do it together. So here, Bob is saying that looks really cool. So I think he may have commented on one of the features. Then he is saying, does it bring in the accounting side too? And this is probably going to be a red flag for me. Okay. So I don't know why you would be bringing the accounting side in the e-commerce platform. Typically, you want to use the e-commerce platform only for the sales and marketing purposes. As soon as you get into the operations, you probably want to hand it off to either ERP or some other platforms that you might be using if you're small, your teams are not really decoupled, you might host a lot of things in the e-commerce platform, but you'll not be able to scale after a certain point.
Yeah, I think at least, since Bob isn't here to answer that, I think he took off. But I think really what he was asking is there a way to integrate that so you can get, say, QuickBooks to this? And I do not see a QuickBooks integration. I do see lots of tax, like TaxJar is in here, but I don't see like Xero or QuickBooks.
So typically, Robert, the way QuickBooks integration is going to work in most commerce platform, it's probably going to be one-way push. Sometimes they might do a little pull as well in bringing some of the data that might be sitting in QuickBooks. But typically, the way architecture is designed in these smaller firms, QuickBooks, the only thing it does is accounting. It does not even store customers at times. Okay, right. It does not store products. So you are simply sending your GL entries. So there is no sort of role of QuickBooks. So obviously, your financials are not going to be embedded as part of each step. And based on Bob's background, he is thinking more from the, when you look at the product margins, when you look at, cost accounting, that's where the real play is in terms of identifying the opportunity. But that is all not going to be possible with this.
No, it's going to be, SQL queries and export to Excel and crosstab queries and, other hacky kind of analysis.
And reactive approach. It's not that you can take action based on the insight that you have embedded as part of your transaction. And that's where you are probably going to be slightly more sophisticated in your architecture. And, you need to use something like ERP to be able to do that. Okay. So sales tax functionality, I think he had a comment there. I think that's pretty much it for comments. Any other final comments, Robert, before we close?
No.
Okay, amazing. So that's it for today, guys. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our e-commerce series for which we meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Not at all.